Hey everybody, if you're tuning in, we're just doing a little proof of concept for a tool I'm going to be calling AdCopilot. Basically, programmatically creating and managing ads and ad campaigns. Currently setting up the back end, not on anything super exciting right now. Just kind of working with some of the information in the database, working on some functions. We're doing proof of concept, no code, so we can get it done quickly. And we'll just go from there. Just making a quick function to do some testing here. Placeholder for now for while I'm streaming. All right. So if the authorization text is correct, we're going to return true. Otherwise, we're going to return false. We're just going to publish this. We can work on building out the API. We're going to pass in. So we're going to make this the first thing. We're going to just pass in the auth text here, and then it's going to return. And we're just going to do a quick conditional. Actually, we don't even need to do a conditional. We're just going to do a precondition. And the precondition is function 1 equals true is required. So if it's not, it's going to error. We're just going to set them an unauthorized text. That's it. Okay. So that means as soon as something comes in here, boom, it's going to hit this. If it's not authorized, going to kick it out. It won't allow it to run anything else that's here. It's just a little bit of safety. All right, so then we're going to, next thing we need to do is we need to check this enum, and we're going to send it down a few different avenues depending on what it's doing. So we're going to use a conditional. We need to change the name of that because that doesn't make sense. Enum add mode. Say if the mode equals add, then we want it to do the thing. Otherwise, another conditional. Mode equals update. And it's going to do this other thing. Otherwise, if the mode equals delete, and we could simplify this even further. We could put some of this into a function. And actually, let's do that. Let's delete those conditionals. Let's just say if the input mode is not null. You know what? Actually, we don't even need to check that because we said that was a required parameter up here. See, mode required. Yes. All right. It's automatically not going to run if it doesn't work. So we can get rid of this whole thing. All right. We're going to delete that. So let's create a function. Okay. We need to do that. Right here. Function. Agency. Hey, how's it going, buddy? All right. We're just working on some API stuff in the back of a proof of concept for a piece of software I'm working on. Not any of the real fun stuff yet, but, you know, getting there. So this is do. All right. So in order to add agency, we need a name and an owner ID. In order to have an owner ID, we need a user. So I guess maybe we should start there. Let's build a user. All right. So for the user, we need a user, password. Let's see, email, password, first name, last name, company name. All right. Because I don't like my databases not being filled out with info. Absolutely, some Xano setup. Been finding it's really, really helpful for doing fast proof of concepts. It's also really good if you're going to ultimately move to a whole other database to get everything kind of in line. Okay, we need company. All right. We have all the info here. So the first thing we need to do is we need to query the user. Make sure that we don't have we're going to be looking for it by email address. I'm going to say input email. And we don't want to list because there shouldn't be multiple. We actually only care if it exists at this point. Call it user query. So now we can create a condition. It's going to go out, it's going to look, and it's going to say, hey, does that email address exist? And if it does, we're going to look at what the answer of that is by creating a conditional. And we're going to say if user query is equal to true, then we want it to do a thing. And the thing that we want it to do is we want it to return. And I want it to return some information here. So we're going to return the result. That's going to be an error. We're also going to have it return the reason, which was user already exists. All right, so it's going to set that up nicely for us. So if it doesn't exist, then we're going to do a database request to create a record. In the user table. Create it now. Going to use the input email, input password, first name, last name, matching all the things, right? We're going to let it auto number the ID. And then, response, we should get back some information that we can use here so we can pass back the ID for the user. And we'll use that. Let's see. No, that's not what I want. What I want to return. Return a set.
I'll be right back. Because I have to pee.
Okay. Wow, they want to offer a promotion to my channel. Nope. I'm going to grow it organically if I'm going to grow it. Thanks. Good luck. All right. So, result, path, success. And then we're going to reason, because we like to keep the output consistent. Successfully. And then we're going to add user. And this value is going to be the ID. So we're just going to test this. Test user at test.com. Password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Company. Test company. Run result user 2. Let's go check our table. Give it a little refresh. Make sure to return the right data. And boom. Yep, that's it. User 2. All right, we're gonna go ahead. Actually, let's just run another test here. We should be able to run this again, and then we should get a failure. Yep, user already exists. Perfect. That function is working correctly. So now that we have that, we can publish the add user. And now that we have add user, we can go to add agency. And that's going to require first name, which is optional. And it's going to be optional because it's potentially they can add a user that already exists, but if their email already exists, we don't need to re-add and update all that information. That should be done from their update profile. So what we'll do then is we'll say, hey, does it exist? And yes, if that user already exists, instead of adding the user, we'll just go and retrieve the user's ID, and then we'll come back and send the flow back to add agency where it can finish up what it's doing. The email address is going to be required. Email. First name, last name, email. And then we need the password. Password's not going to be required. Same reason as before. All right. Company. It's also not required. All right. Now we have the agency fields that we need to add on to. And we need the name and the owner ID. All right. So that's all we're going to use for now. We'll expand that stuff later because we're going to probably want some additional information. But that agency name, that will be required. All right. So the very first thing that we need to do is we need to go set up this call from a utility function that I set up already. Go back. Sorry, a custom function, which is auth passed. And that's going to return function 1. I thought we set this up already. Let me go look here at my API. Maybe I set it up somewhere else. There we go. Nope, I did not. Oh, I did here. Okay. So it's checking auth from the external source first. Okay, so let's go back to our functions. I don't need to check that here because this is already getting checked before it can be passed into the program. So ideally, we will be working with first checking to make sure that this user exists already. All right, so then we are going to use the function. We should probably look for the user first, just for good convention. So let's just look for query all records from the user table. We're going to do this by, sorry, I did not want to join. I wanted a, custom query. There we go. So we want to do this by user table email is equal to input email. And then the output, we're just going to give it exists here. So then that determines what we do. So if user one exists, so that's going to be a condition. No. So if user one equals true, then we're going to do another database request here. And we're just going, you know what, actually, we can simplify this a step further by adjusting the function we did for add agency or for add user. So if we add the user, and we were saying that if the user query is true, that we're just going to return an error that it already exists. But realistically, we could handle returning that information. Just returning the user so we don't have to query for it again. So if the email is email, instead of having that returning as a bool, we'll return it as a single record. And then instead of asking if it's true, if the record does not equal null, which means that it found something, then we're going to return an error that the user already exists, and then we're going to use the user path again, and this time we're going to return the user query .id. All right, so let's test that real quick. So this should give us run once, user added. Run it again, user already exists. We got the same user. Okay, so now that works, we'll publish that change. We want to do a lot of the heavy lifting in other functions. So when we're looking at what something is doing, the flow is a whole lot easier within our function groups. Otherwise, it's just going to be a pain in the butt to sort out later. All right. So actually, instead of even doing a conditional query for the user, I don't even have to do that. Because we can just use the function, expect that we're going to add the user, supply it all the information, and then one way or another, it's going to give us back the right info that we're looking for. Right, so we're going to give us back the output. And that should give us, let's just check our assumptions here. Function one. User test at testuser.com. Password, dev company, agency name, test agency, run this function. All right, see, successfully added, user 4. And then if we run it again, it's going to tell us error, user already exists, user 4. So either way, this output, we can say, is the user. Well, let's see. Let's give that a little user function, so it's a little easier to tell from the database ID. All right, so now that we have that back, now we can make a database request to query to make sure that the agency doesn't exist. And this should be that the agency name is equal to input agency name and the owner ID is equal to we need to join. Okay, let's get rid of this for a second. We need to join our user table so we can check the email address that we're doing. We're going to say we're going to join the user table on the agency owner ID is equal to the user table user ID. All right, so now we can do a query for the agency name and the email address associated to the user ID that's on that table. And user email is equal to input email. All right. So this one we probably want a specific bit of information because we're not going to update this. So this one we are going to just return an exists. Save that. And then we'll just do a conditional on this. So we're going to say that if agency one equals true where it exists, then we're going to return object set result false. Set reason already exists. We don't need to return the agency ID at this point, I don't think. So we're just going to go ahead and save that. And then if it's not, then we're going to go ahead and add a database, and we're going to add a record. We're going to add an agency. All right, so then name, agency name, owner ID. This is going to be from the first function that we got. So we got the user function. Stop doing that. ID. So that's going to give us this. And then the output. We're going to need all that information back. So we'll end up needing agency ID because we're going to need to tie it in on the user table. All right. So now we also need to add some tie-in information here. The tie-in information that we're going to add is message. Yeah, the tie-in information is going to pass to another function. That way we can reuse it later when we add additional users. So let's go create that function. And that function is going to be for adding an agency user, which has the agency ID, the user ID, and then the access level. And the access level options are user or admin. So we're gonna. Oh, didn't want to add that. That was an accident. Let's get rid of that. And so by doing this at the same time, we kind of assure that we're going to be adding the very first thing to it, the very first item. You'll be able to see why we're going to do that. Just a minute. I'm just going to publish this just to make sure it saves. And then add function, add agency user. Can I add a new? We should be able to do that. Yeah. See when a new user joins. Notification Slack when a new user joins. Is that new user joins on Twitch or new user joins like the software that I'm building? I'm not sure which part you're asking for. We probably should be able to do either, but got the agency ID that's required. It's an integer, and then we got the user. That's required. Yeah, we should be able to do that in the software when a new user joins. There's a couple of considerations that we have to think of for that. Typically when a user joins, this is going to be something where somebody would be assigning the user. We should be able to create webhooks to kind of automate some of that process. So for me, I would probably do that in whatever software is going to issue the webhook. Like I'll probably end up using Lead Connector or my white labeled version of Go High Level in order to send a webhook out after a user registration form, or from the Bubble front end, in which case it should be super easy to connect in. We won't be able to do it from Xano directly, I don't think. Actually, you know what? I think there is there is something for yeah, we got Slack webhooks already integrated. I'm sure we can do it through Discord. I know they have an API. We should be able to send out a webhook that way too. So we could tie it in here, or we could tie it in through the front end. Also, it just depends on how we want to work it. All right, so we're going to add enum. Oh, let's go back because I need user admin lowercase. I want to make sure that they match. And actually, I'm going to modify the database for a second because I'm also want to add an additional value to denote owner. specifically because the owner should have more permission on something than a user should. So then we have user, admin, or owner are the only possible values. And so in this particular instance, we're adding the agency user, so we don't necessarily have to be incredibly concerned with it, but we really should be checking to make sure that the combinations don't exist anyway. So in good convention, we're going to do it. And we're going to query the agency user table. We're going to look for the agency user, where the agency ID is equal to the input agency ID. And the agency user ID is equal to the input user ID. So ideally, this table should only have one entry where it makes a unique combination between the agency and the user. A user wouldn't exist on an agency multiple times because it's only going to get one access level. So then we're going to let's see. So we shouldn't have any reason to actually return anything beyond a success message for adding a user because they're inputting the information. So we're just going to say that it exists. And then the conditional. If agency users 1 equals true, then we're going to return result. Oh, no, let's need an object first. Return a result. That is false. It didn't work. Reason. This. And that's it. We're not giving them any more information than that. If they don't exist, then we get to add a record. Back one. Let's try a database, add a record. Alrighty. Now we're going to add agency user. If I'm going too fast, let me know. Here's one of the advantages of naming things the same across multiple places is that when you name your inputs along with what you're getting in the databases, you get this nice handy thing where it automatically matches up when you use any of your CRUD statements. All right. So that happened. And you know what? Honestly, I don't care to use the proper end function. So we're going to just use another return here. Just that way, it's just easier. I know exactly what data I'm getting. I like it better. No other reason than that. All right, so we need to return the same things. Result. It's going to be true. Then we need to return the reason. They're added successfully. And let's make that a little more descriptive. Save. All right, so let's see. We have an agency in here. Nope. Let's just make one real quick. test. And we need a user. Just say user 1. Should be me. Boom, user 1. Okay. So now we can test this. Make sure that we have another user in the user table. All right, let's give it user 3. And this should be the owner. Unsuccessfully added. Already exists. Let's see if it did it. Agency user. Aha! There we go. All right, so now we can go back to the actual API endpoint. And give it the function. We're not going to do that here. We are going to modify this stuff. See, authorization passed, precondition is true. So now we're going to use the function that we created of add agency, and we're going to send in all of the inputs. So we owner first name, owner last name, owner email, the password. Where did it go? Did I not add the password? I didn't add the password. Okay, well, let's take care of that. Well, that's not required if the user already exists. So agency, password, company name, company, agency name, agency, and save. All right, so now this gives us an endpoint to, as a platform owner, that I want to go ahead and use platform in order to add a new agency that can add additional locations and users. Then I will be able to do that. And then eventually we'll have to make a similar setup like this in order to add users and then locations, and a location to basically be like a company that the users can operate and play with. So we've got several layers here. We've got a platform owner. We have agencies who are utilizing the service to be able to set up other businesses. Then we have the business or the location that that service is going to run for. And we have the users to be able to run those locations. So we're kind of walking through that hierarchy right now. Let's see. Set up is here. This is add mode. Actually work because that's not the correct case. Let me see. Did I leave those lowercase? Nope, I capitalized them all. Okay. Because why not complicate things a little bit? All right. Unable to locate far user function ID. Let's see. Add agency. All right. Let's look at what happened. Something went wrong in the function, which is kind of weird. Oh. Yeah, would help if we'd finished the function too. So we added agency user. Now we got to go back to add agency. All right. So then now now that we have the agency, we have to. Nope, not input. This is agency function. Yeah, so agency function .id user function. We're gonna hard code this one. No, that's supposed to be the owner. Probably should have thought I did this already, but apparently not. All right. So user function .id is now that we're in here. Let's. All right. So let's go look at user function and see why it's not working. User function output. Oh, it's because I don't think I set it as ID. Let's drill into this function. What did I set that back as a set? What is ID? Dot user. Okay, that would explain it. User function. Well, it's saying user function .id somewhere else in the add agency user. All right. I'm just going to publish this real quick. Actually, I need the debug from that. User function .id in 3.2 F 3.2. Okay. User function .id. That's because we're not using user function.id there. We should be using .user. And that's .user as well. There we go. Yay. Okay. Let's publish that. And let's try it again. Nope. We went all the way from add agency. Agency already exists. All right. That means we just change the agency. True. All right. So now let's see what we have in the database. You should see users. Good. Agencies. Yep. Users. Yep. Yep. Those look great. All right. Let's do a little bit of cleanup. If you're doing this in production, please don't go into databases. Just start removing stuff, because then you're going to end up with things that have abandonment. Like, as example, this now has a reference that no longer exists, which we don't really care about at this exact moment, but it would be a problem in a production environment for sure. And actually, we're just going to clear out the whole agency as a whole here. So there should be no users. Should only be one user left in the database. And no locations, because we're not using those at the moment. All right, that's all cleaned up. And it looks like our API endpoint is functional. All right, so we have some options here. We can either assess the mode inside the function, or inside the API, where we say, is this add, update, delete, remove, or we can handle inside the function of add agency. Yes, there's benefits of having everything kind of all together, because then you touch the logic for each piece, and it's modularized. But then anytime you call a function for add agency, you can always pass this mode in if anything needs to happen, and it's going to use the same path. So it creates kind of like laying the groundwork. Once it has all the basics, they're all built together. So then you can always enforce that logic as it's happening. So I feel like let's address this custom function. Add agency. We might. All right. So if we leave add agency as is, and then we can duplicate the function add agency. Let's clone it. And then we're going to say agency. We're going to need some similar logic here. Let's just do delete agency for now. Well, primarily, we're not going to be primarily deleting agency, because that leads to a whole host of bullshit. that we're going to need to delete. But I feel like it, yeah, this is not necessary for the MVP because all we need to do is be able to add or remove. What do you think? Should we do it or should we not do it? Let me know. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and just do it because it's got to get done at some point. All right. So we're going to delete. So the very first thing that we need to do is we don't need to worry about the function of adding a user. Deleting the agencies. Well, actually, probably shouldn't have bothered to clone this. Deleting the agency is going to be like the very last thing that's going to happen because we have to back out the other tables. So let's do, do database. We've got to get a record. We need to get the agency so we can get the ID. And I forgot, get a record. Doesn't work quite that easily. We need to actually do a query all records. Yeah. Yeah. We've got some issues with what we're about to do here. Just going to say that up front. Because the agency name could be subject to being mistyped, so we'd have to enforce that on the front. Make sure that we get the input correctly on the front end. Otherwise, it's not going to find a positive match, and that'll create a problem. But we need where the agency name is correct and the user. We need to join the user table first. We join the user on email. So user email equals the input email. I didn't save that. And that was not a correct. So that should be the agency owner ID equals the user owner or the user ID. There we go. And delete that one. All right, so that's going to be able to give us the ID, which we will need to we need that to handle the users. So we're going to need to do a full database request for ultimately going to need to delete records. For agency users. Oh, that's going to delete the whole table. I don't want to do that. Add records in bulk. All right, so we're going to do a delete from agency users. Where the agency ID is equal to agency1.id. So look up the agency to get the ID, and then we're going to delete all records from that table where the IDs exist. All right. So I'm just going to be undoing this for just a little bit longer. All right, so after that's successful, then we need to delete the agency record, and we're going to do that where the ID is equal to agency1.id. All right, so let's check the database. Do we have any agencies in here? Agency, I'll just test agency real quick. Oh, 5. And then agency users, add 4. Agency ID is 5. User ID is 1. Oop. ID is 1. Access level, that should be owner. All right. And we can do one more quick test here. Second user on that user table. That way we can make sure it's going to delete multiples. All right, owner and user. All right, so now delete agency. We don't need this. We don't need that. Well, we do need that. We don't need that. We don't need that. And actually, this is internal, so we don't even need to do a match on this. So we just need this match here. Save. You got the, and so we get the agency ID, delete all the agency users, delete all the agencies that match that ID. All right, and then let's that final step and see what happens. Need the agency name, test. What does that say? Text filter requires a scalar value. Oh, you know what? I didn't see what step that was. In step 2, delete records in agency. Well, we're going to need to actually figure this out because we need, that's going to, field value should map to multiple records at some point, and we don't want to delete only one. Well, okay. Yeah, for the agency users, it should map to multiple values. So let's look at how we can handle that. Okay. Do a for each loop. That should work. So for each item in agency 1. Actually, nope. Won't be agency 1. Okay, so we got the agency ID. So now we need to do a query of agency users instead, where the users table agency ID is equal to agency 1 dot ID. All right, so that's going to give us a list of all the users, and that's an agency users 2. Now we can do a loop. We'll do a for each loop. We're going to say for each item in agency users 2. I'm going to delete agency user record. The ID equals agency users 2. Well, actually, nope. Item dot ID. Hey, there we go. That should do it. We get rid of that. Then we delete record and agency. Let's see what this does for us. Lists are not supported. Oh, all right. Oh, okay. So we just got to change this output here because it's only going to come out with one. Return single and try it again. Success. All right, let's check our databases. So let's check agency users, no users. Agency, no agency. Should have left the user table alone. User exists. Awesome. In the future, we might want to add some additional data against that in order to check to see if users are associated anywhere. And then if they are not, to make the user inactive. We need to do a minor adjustment to the database to do that because the users table does not have an activity. So let's actually do that.
Can we go inside?
I'll be done in just a minute, bud. Okay, so we're going to say it's a Boolean is active, and this is only going to be true or false. I'm going to say that it is required, and the default is false, just in case. All right, so we're gonna manually activate these, make a couple of minor changes to our functions that handle that. Add user. Query add record. And then we want to switch this to true now, just to make sure that gets inserted so the user inserts correctly. That's fixed. So then delete agency. We're going to, so after we delete all the agency users, we're going to do another loop. And we're going to look for we're going to get a record from the user table. Are we going to do that? No, we're not. We're going to check check the agency user table for an agency user. The user ID is equal to item dot user ID. So that's going to give us the specific user, and we just want this to be a count. Because if they're not assigned somewhere, then we have a conditional. I don't know what step we were just on. Agency users 1. Oh, okay. So if agency users 1, if agency users 1, yeah, we need more to that. Okay, so agency users 1 is greater than 0, meaning that they're assigned somewhere. Nope. Let's just say equal to 0. And then we'll do something if they're equal to 0. We're going to update the record for the user. User ID. And we're just going to switch this is active to false. I guess that's going to open up a whole other can of worms, because now if we're setting them to false, when we add a user to an agency, if they exist, we have to set that flag to true. I'm not ready to do that right now. All right, so we're just going to forget this whole thing ever happened. We're just going to, nobody saw that. You saw nothing. All right, so Let's build our response real quick. Object and object, and we want to set result true.
The switch is going to die.
To reason you see in all all associated user licenses have been removed. Done. All right. We should just add a conditional because,
I'm going to be back, Daddy. Because I have to go poo-poo.
all right, if agency one is null,
What?
go ahead.
You want to do?
Then we're going to return false and reason agency not found. All right, so now we have, there we go. So now we have delete agency. So now instead of doing the add agency, delete agency, we're just going to do a new function, call it agency crud. Because that's going to stand for all the things, right? So we have first name, not required, last name, not required, email, not always required. Text, agency name, company name. What else do we have here? Take it in on the API. So let's see. First name, last name, email, agency name, company name, mode, and password. Password, pass, and then enum. Mode, always required, and update. The same. Add, update, delete, enable, disable. All right. So we're just going to do a string of conditionals here. I'm not going to do it for all of them because we initially want to check for enum. What it's going to be, mode equals add. If it doesn't equal add, we're going to check if mode is equal to, we're going to check if mode is equal to delete. I'm all over the place all of a sudden. Conditional. If it is, do the delete. Conditional. Check if mode is equal to update. And update delete. And then enable, disable. A little bit caught if I wanted to group enable and disable together. I think I'm going to leave them separate, but that's the thing we could do. I'm surprised that they don't have a switch case condition, which would allow us to pass through and just define something as it comes across. And then we could go to clean things up a ton. But this is the hand we're dealt, so this is what we're going to play with. All right, so if mode equals, nope, not what I wanted. You got out of your cage. There we go. All right, so if it equals add, we're going to use custom function, add agency. Pass it the info. If it equals delete, custom function, delete agency, pass the info. And then we'll be able to do the same thing for update, enable, disable, all of that stuff. We're going to publish this. It's not going to be perfect because we got to add some more logic to it. Makes it this far, then we're going to say that this is returned successful. Just for the sake of it being able to finish. Alt. True. And we want kind of consistent returns for the most part. So reason. So now if it makes it that far, it's successful. If it doesn't, we're going to kick back errors from somewhere else. All right. So agency CRUD is done. So now, instead of using add agency on the endpoint, we have the one API endpoint that'll give us multiple operations after it's authenticated. And we use, instead of add agency, we're going to use agency CRUD. Agency CRUD. And then owner first name, owner last name, owner email, agency name, company name, password, and mode. And then we just need to make sure that these are, okay, so that one is required. Agency name is not required. That's not required because sometimes it's not. So that's the only thing about doing these is that you can't enforce on the front end if something is or is not required. Unless it's required all the way through. So that is required. Not required. All right, that all looks correct. All right, so now we have the endpoint done. So this endpoint should be here, and this won't change because this will handle all the add, remove, update, delete, enable, and disabling of all of the agency assets. And then the agency needs a bool is enabled as well. Required, and then its default value is true, so that'll automatically go in unless we tell it to be disabled. Because what would be the point of adding an agency if it wasn't going to be enabled when we add it? So there we go. That's a little bit about what I'm doing at the moment. So we've got the ability to set up the agency. Didn't get to any of the front end stuff, but essentially we're going to be looking at doing the front end design through here. I'm going to be doing all of my authentication against Xano as well. I have an override procedure that'll allow us to log in and not have 1,000 database records hang around. Won't require us to register on Bubble and on Xano, but we can use Xano as the back end, which will preserve the amount of data that we're actually allowed to have in Bubble is limited in terms of subscription level. So let's make sure that the reason to upgrade in Bubble is bandwidth. So we're going to take all of the data storage over to Xano and manage things there, eventually including the suite connections and things like that. But we have not gotten there yet. So I'm going to get going. I will be back to do this more. I'll try to stream a little bit more as we go along. So hope you guys enjoyed watching. Talk to you guys later.